WWE NXT. Now, JR interview this week revealed that NXT Season 3 top 8 are in fact potentially on lockdown. They know who they're going to pick from FCW, and indeed JR also mentioned that they're thinking about Season 4 and Season 5, which just shows you how far ahead they are now planning this show. It seems to be that there's a long-term future. Of course, people wondering where is it going to go after SmackDown goes to Sci-Fi, NXT left without a home. But we're going to talk a bit about those coming seasons of NXT. Who are the guys down in FCW that are going to be on it? Now, of course, the first name that will jump off the page to myself and yourself, we're both big FCW watchers, Donnie Marlowe, the son of Haku, a fantastic worker.
Yeah, we've seen this guy pull out all the stops on FCW, and they really give him a lot of time down there and really put him over. So a guy like that, who is another second generation, possibly third generation wrestler coming into the mix with your Cody Rhodes and your Ortons and whatnot, I'm sure he will get the push that he deserves. But then again, maybe not. Maybe because of where he has come from, that might not be the case. I mean, the Usos got their big push, and where have they been for the last 2 weeks, 3 weeks? I don't know.
Our picks for NXT Season 3, and of course that first guy is one that I certainly noticed when I was watching FCW. He's the son of a legend, and of course it's not just that, he really does work well, and also a nice size to him as well. I felt at one point that you could swap him with David Otunga. If you did put those guys side by side, they do look similar-ish, but I believe he's a firm lock, and of course this is just a predicted lineup for the coming season. Another guy who I believe should be in there, maybe he won't be, but Brett DiBiase. Now, Brett DiBiase, of course, the brother of Ted DiBiase Jr., son of Ted DiBiase Sr., he's in that lineage, and again, another guy who is descended from a legend. He is somebody who I think has a great chance also of being in this next season, and I think he was let down a little bit. There was, of course, talk about a Fortunate Son angle a few months ago, where perhaps you were going to see all the DiBiases involved in some angle, and he's doing very well in FCW.
Yeah, it's going to be tough for them to find a spot if he does go up through NXT and he does do well and he gets kept on the main roster on one of the shows. For him to have a place, I think either pair him with Ted, as you say, and go with the Fortunate Sons thing. Again, a bit close to home with the whole Fortune thing, name-wise, with TNA and whatnot, but maybe have him as the son who doesn't inherit anything from the family jewels and whatnot, and seeks revenge on the older brother or something along those lines, and a babyface kind of role might work. But I think it'll be tough for him to find a safe place for him without messing up Teddy too much.
It's been said before, hasn't it, that he has such a similar look to Ted DiBiase Jr. that Brett is, as you say, going to struggle to stand out, to be different, to be unique. And his brother's taking the $1 million belts. Now, unless we get in a feud where those guys are trying to get that belt from each other, I really don't know what they can do to introduce him unless they put him under a mask or just change him altogether. I don't think you want to do that, but maybe even a brothers tag team could be an interesting one.
Yeah, it could be actually very good. If they do look very alike, it's definitely going to cause problems for them. So yeah, maybe a tag team of the Fortunate Sons would be pretty good.
A lot of talk this summer as well about the possibility of a diva being entered into NXT Season 3 as a rookie. Now, of course, we had Lay Cool as the pros in Season 2, which kind of started that ball rolling, I think, for Divas making it onto that show. Of course, all shows have a Divas presence. Indeed, ECW was no different when it had that time slot. So I think there are a lot of hopeful prospects down in FCW that could fill that role. First and foremost, to mention AJ Lee. Now, this girl, very good the last couple of months of coverage of FCW that I've seen, and indeed now she is sort of not on TV as much. But also there's Naomi Knight. That girl is the current FCW Women's Champion. I mean, a lot happens when you can't watch FCW.
Yeah, it's been a while since I've seen it, to be honest, but I do remember both of them, especially AJ Lee. I think we did speak very highly of her after a couple of weeks of watching some of her stuff on FCW, and I think we pinned her as kind of one to watch for the future. So it would be good, and it would be kind of fresh for NXT to have a diva on the show. It might get a little bit tough for them to do all those keg carrying challenges and whatnot. I'm sure she would be a little bit outweighed and outnumbered size and strength wise for any diva to come up and do that. But again, when it comes to cutting promos and a lot of the other NXT things that they get up to, I think there's good space for a diva up there.
A good idea to put a diva in the mix, and it's something that would do quite well. They could have a whole diva storyline going on there with pro divas and feuds with some of the divas that aren't getting too much airtime. I think plenty of mileage to expand NXT, and I think a good feature for a new season. They've steadily added things to it, and it's looking better than ever. It really does look quality wise, production wise, head and shoulders above the SmackDown at least, and without a doubt above TNA Impact. So we are picking some of our NXT Season 3 hopefuls. There is talk of Season 3 being an absolute lock, that it will happen. JR said that the guys apparently are picked and that they're thinking about future seasons. One guy who of course was on FCW and still is around a bit was G-Rilla. But unfortunately now the NXT naming syndrome has kicked in and he's called Brodus Clay.
Yeah, and apparently I've heard that he was dropped too. I think he was let go from the roster a couple of days ago somehow. People in the chat can correct me if I'm wrong on that, but it definitely rings a bell. But that guy was, I think we were big fans of G-Rilla, or Gorilla, or whatever the hell you want to call him. But the name change, a la McGillicuddy, probably not the best of moves there for WWE.
This is it. I did see him on the roster page, but you could well be right. In fact, I looked so hard for him under the Gorilla name. I didn't know he was called Brodus Clay, and when I did eventually find him, I just thought, what are they up to? But I would have liked to have seen him up there, let's put it that way. Other than that, I was going to mention Johnny Curtis. Now, the last FCW I saw, he was a clean freak and he was going around with the gloves, and it was a gimmick, but when you took all that gimmick away, you were left with a guy who could work a confident match, had that good build. I know it's hard to expand on him much more due to the fact that perhaps I would have only seen him wrestle maybe twice.
Yeah, I remember this guy too, and I think it's the kind of gimmick that instantly you just get, and sometimes it's hard to kind of get people over and what they're about and whatnot, but that guy's straight away. So I think yeah, I like those kind of, it's a small little gimmick, but it works and it's good, and it definitely, you remember it. And I think I wouldn't have remembered, even when you said the name, I didn't know who you were talking about when you said the gimmick recognition. So not a bad thing.
Indeed, 3 other hopefuls that basically I just picked off the roster page, and like you say, FCW roster changes by the minute. Guys could be gone one day, here the next. But Cable Jones looks like a guy that maybe you could see there. A lot of guys with similar looks, that seems to be a problem down there at the moment. Everybody seems to have a doppelganger in some shape or form. Xavier Woods, again, never seen him, but I'd pick him. And also E Langston, who I have seen. Big guy, almost like a mix between a Batista and a Lashley.
Yeah, except with a head that's probably the same size as both of those heads together. The guy's absolutely, he's just got a mallet of a head basically. He actually looks like a lump hammer, but I wouldn't get in his way for sure. But the name E Langston, probably not the greatest. I think he's another one of those footballer dudes, isn't he?
I think he could be right. Probably one of those guys who has that football background. Certainly, by the look of him, you would imagine that he played football at some point. Indeed, he does look like a guy who perhaps has had his time in sport. Whether it's been professional or amateur, I suppose we'll find out when eventually he potentially maybe makes it there. So NXT Season 3, that's going to be on TV. Is it going to be on the internet? Are they going to self-broadcast it on WWE.com? Well, they haven't announced a place for it yet, and that was the debate after NXT Season 1 was a little bit through. People mentioned how, well, where's it going to go? It's not going to be on Sci-Fi. That's where SmackDown will be, and they're going to have to find a home for that. But talking about NXT Season 2 and this current week's episode, some of our reactions to that. Now, this season has been quite good. I think they had a tough task to follow up the roster that was on NXT Season 1. Of course, now just 3 guys left after 2 rookies were eliminated this week. Now, one of my things that I think they should have more of is this Jamie Keys, this ring announcer. More screen time for her, for sure. But leading on to actual content, guys cutting promos this week with Caval mentioning total non-stop action.
Yeah, I definitely stopped and pressed the rewind button on that one, because what a serious blunder, I think, on Caval's behalf. And Cole and Matthews copped it straight away, pretty much. Whether they're talking about his rap in general, but I think Cole referred to him as an idiot, and said something like, "Why would you say that?" Could be an inside way of saying you really are an idiot. But yeah, strange one.
It was so off key, wasn't it? It just came out of nowhere, and maybe someone backstage told him get in a TNA rib. And I certainly wouldn't have gone out of my way, unless I was told to identify myself with that product when I'm on the big show. I mean, you'd be better off identifying yourself as the guy from ECW, really. I really don't understand what that was all about, but perhaps it was a kind of an NXT versus Impact shoot. We know those shows are on round about the same ratings. I'm sure NXT gets a bit more. But overall, I think it is kind of those guys against each other, and maybe that's what it was about. But yeah, Caval on the mic, and as I mentioned in a previous video, all of these guys are confident on the mic. It seems like it's some kind of prerequisite now. You've got to have that, and maybe they don't look any further at you if you don't.
Yeah, I just think it's funny how there's so much shoot that goes on basically on NXT between the commentators and the talent and the guys coming up from FCW, or the rookies. That's the proper term I was trying to think of. But it's constant shoot material, I think, and it's very, very funny. Definitely the funniest show of the week, more so than Raw. Not better than Raw, but funnier, and definitely funnier than SmackDown. One
topic that might have a lot of people thinking, you're mad. What are you thinking? What is the reason for asking such a question? Surely all wrestling is a work. But I do wonder, these eliminations, do they know about it? The Raw draft, of course, famously with JR apparently not knowing he was going to be drafted to SmackDown commentary. That was one that raised the question, was it a work, was it a shoot? I think in that case, with JR, it was so hard to call it. But what about these guys? They're lower ranking, they don't have as much influence and power. Maybe Vince thinks it's funny to perhaps keep them in the dark.
Yeah, if he does, he is genius. And if they're in on it, then fair enough. I'm sure they have to have some sort of a promo ready for once they're announced as being eliminated and whatnot. And we saw Husky Harris handle that one very well, I think, this week on NXT, when he was announced as being the second of the two to be eliminated from Season 2.
It's always fascinated me, the truth behind the work and behind the shoot. What is work, what is shoot? I suppose that's why half the time we're interested. We like to know what goes on backstage. But I think so much goes on backstage at this NXT in terms of bookers meetings. They have to be really fighting each other tooth and nail to get the guys that they like, the guys that they want to see go far, on the right side of the booking, and to get Vince on their side as well. I'm sure it's probably tricky. Who are the guys who have stood out for the office? I think it's universal that Husky Harris has been well praised.
Yeah, a lot of rumours and a lot of people saying Husky was the one to watch. And you do have to wonder as well if he's the one that was eliminated I'm sure he's not gone for good. He's going to be around in some capacity, like a lot of the Season 1 guys when they came back and formed Nexus and whatnot.